by Riverside.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of LeadHERShip Bytes, the podcast that serves up bold ideas, actionable insights, and real talk with women who are leading the way in strategy, innovation, and impact. Shana Peters is a woman who knows how to move the needle as a strategic problem solver. She's a project manager. She's also the vice president and marketing strategist at MDG, where she guides associations through smart data-driven strategies that drive real and measurable growth. They see that growth in attendance, in revenue, and member engagement, all the things. So we're really excited to talk with her today. Shauna's roots start in public sector events, and she has a double major in both English and sociology from UVA. And what I like about Shauna, and I've worked with her, full disclosure, I've worked with her in the past. She blends storytelling with strategy in a really unique way that helps amplify results. And she's passionate about it. She's passionate about leadership. She's passionate about marketing and omni-channel campaigns and just making sure that every client and the decisions that every client makes is backed by insight. So if you've ever been wondering about how to turn your data into direction or how to lead with detail and vision, this is your episode, and we hope you get a lot out of it today. So Shauna, welcome to LeadHERShip Bytes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So let's kick things off to talk a little bit about your origin story. How did someone who's an English and sociology major find her way into strategic marketing and events?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I was in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. It seems like so many people these days have a clear vision and a path. I wasn't sure, but I've always been good at reading and writing, and English was always a passion. So I leaned into that. I was fortunate enough to have the room in my schedule to pick up some other areas of interest, and sociology really stood out to me as something, this is a study of people. So like in hindsight as a marketer, it really does make a lot of sense that that would have been a pathway for me. But at the time, I wasn't thinking in those terms. I was thinking about following passions. And then when I graduated, I really did want to get into marketing. I thought it was an area that really interested me. I just hadn't realized that early enough to start going down a marketing degree pathway. But I believe if you can read and write well, you can do so many things. And so I leaned into that when I was applying for jobs. And lo and behold, I fell into the event space. It wasn't something I was seeking out. I think a lot of us who land here have never heard of this $400+ billion industry, and yet it is a big industry. I was fortunate. There was a show management company looking for a marketing assistant, and I thought, that's my pathway into a marketing job. And little did I know it was also my pathway into this major industry that I have fallen in love with. I think you either really get into it and you really start to find the groove of what we're doing to support events and the associations that produce them, or you find that you want to go in a different direction, and people tend to churn out pretty quick if they're not going to be lifers.
So you've done some work across those public sector events, as you mentioned, association marketing, and now you're at MDG. What do you think has been sort of the common thread that has kept you passionate across all those different pieces of your work?
I think every step in my career so far is really focused on audience-centric campaign development. And anyone who's been in marketing over the last decade plus has seen the landscape of marketing really shift and change. So you have to stay nimble. You have to keep looking for what's new and what's next. You have to keep learning and educating yourself if you're going to stay at the forefront of what's happening. So whatever industry I'm focusing on, or with the type of client I'm serving, whether I'm working in-house, whether I'm serving clients from an agency perspective, there's always something new to be learning. There's something new that, clients are looking for. I remember when personas became a hot button, it was something new to learn, lean into and say, what exactly is this persona development? How do I leverage it? Is it something we can do? And to figure that out. And now, years later, so many people start with persona development campaigns and, foundational aspect of so much of the work that we do, but that wasn't always the case. And so there's just always those opportunities, no matter what sector we're in, to focus on the audience. I learned at the show management company who all the audiences are that make up an event. Who are the key stakeholders? What's in it for the association that's putting on the event? What are they looking to get out of it? They're looking to make money. It's a revenue driver, but they're also looking to support their industry. They're, the place to be to come for a certain type of education, whatever your profession or field. What are the attendees getting out of it? They're getting that professional development, the networking, the product of, specification or identification of products and services that they need to do their jobs well. Those exhibitors or sponsors, they're looking to grow their business opportunities. So you have this whole ecosystem coming together and really understanding what's in it for each of them. And then how do you position that value to each of those audiences? That's true regardless of what sector you're working in or what you're trying to accomplish. Even when we're looking at it, the association from the membership side or product development or other things that associations are trying to do, I always start with understanding who we're trying to engage, the what's in it for me that we all have when we're looking at something, right? We have to look at that, from a marketing angle, doing that through messaging and channels that are available to each of those audiences. And those have certainly changed, but knowing what we're trying to accomplish, I mean, that's what I'm doing today too, even in my role, even as it's become a little bit more internal, focusing on supporting our teams, we always start with who are the audiences that we're trying to target, what are their needs, and then how do we deliver for them?
Yeah, and I love that idea of showing up for both your clients and their audiences and trying to, first of all, understand them. Because I think what I've seen in marketing is that a lot of times organizations and marketers will sometimes get so focused on jumping into the tactics of a campaign that, some of the foundational pieces are missing, right? And then, you wonder on the other end why things aren't working the way you want them to work. It's like building a house on sand, right? If you don't have that foundation there, the whole thing's gonna collapse and may not turn out the way you want it. And that being said, as a marketing leader, data informed decision making is really at the core of everything that you do. It's at the core of your work. How do you balance what you just talked about, which is that analytical piece with the creative piece when you're putting together marketing strategies?
I mean, data obviously is at the core of building those foundations that you were talking about, like 100% speaking my language. We've got to have that solid foundation, and data is going to be the way to get us there. But one of our lead data strategists always reminds me that one of the challenges we have with today's world, where we're getting so much data and we have access to so much more data, it also makes it less reliable. So you don't want everything to be about the data. And we certainly don't want to make all of our decisions purely based on the data, but we want to use that to get our bearings, understand the context that we're working with. So maybe I need to know, what are the past registration trends that we've seen in this particular audience to help me understand the patterns? And then, maybe I'll use a total addressable market data to look at the current market share versus the larger potential audience population. So where are potential growth markets, right? Data is going to help me figure those things out, but that data isn't going to tell me how do I build a targeted campaign that's going to engage that growth market or those specific audiences that we just identified. That's where we have to look at the industry trends. We have to go to other types of research. And frankly, AI can be helpful here too, in helping us take that step back and look at what is everything we know about this particular audience or this particular market segment. And then I can use that information to brainstorm, well, if I know that I'm targeting a C-suite audience, they may have gatekeepers that I have to go through. I may not be reaching them directly. So what the justification process looks like might be different. They're not going to respond to mass marketing. I need to get directly in front of them in a one-on-one, peer-driven way. But if I'm looking at, new managers who are today likely going to be more millennial, or even some of our older Gen Z audience who are coming up into management. Apparently Gen Z is reaching upper 20s at this point, which is still mind-boggling to me. But those audiences are more likely to be using social media as a search engine. So the way I'm going to reach them is going to be completely different than when I'm talking about a different, audience or a different generation. that's where I'm going to have to put a little bit of critical thinking behind what the data is giving me to then say, okay, this is what I know about these audiences. Here's what I know about this industry and what they care about. And then layer all of those pieces together to determine that right marketing approach for each of the audiences that we're going to target.
Wonderful, wonderful answer. So let's talk about bringing you in, you and your agency. You come in a lot of times when companies sometimes are struggling with their marketing approach and how to get the results that they want. And you've led those sort of reevaluation and repositioning campaigns and efforts. And, I'm very curious about what your approach is when a client needs to really rethink their entire marketing direction.
Yeah. Well, one of the, nuances of the job, and we like to say that we live in the gray area, right? Because it's hard to be, completely on one end or another end. But one of those nuances is understanding why the client is coming to us in the first place. As you said, sometimes they are coming because they're seeing a decline or they're challenged and they need some support. Sometimes they feel like they might be coming to the edge of that sort of cliff and they want to get ahead of it. So they want to make sure, things aren't bad yet, but we're worried. We see economic indicators or we see certain things happening in our industry and we want to stay ahead of it so that we don't sort of go over that cliff. And the approach is going to be different depending on whether we're trying to kind of dig out of the hole or whether we're just trying to keep even keel. But one of the things that we like to start with is a marketing assessment. And it's a really quick way for our team of subject matter experts to examine what's currently being done and you look at the performance of each of those components. And we kind of rate the campaign against best practices and provide that back to the client so we can say, here's how you stack up to, what you should be doing in each of these areas. And then we give them both short and long-term kind of guidance. So maybe here's the top 5 things you could change now that would have some impact on your existing campaign or your upcoming campaign. And then here's the top 5 longer term things that kind of go back, as you were saying earlier, to that foundation setting. Where do we need to revisit? Do we really understand today's audience and today's market? Do we need to go back and dig into that a little more? What maybe has shifted as far as messaging that's going to resonate with the audience? I referenced generations, in our last response, and our parent company Freeman does a lot of research around the workforce and things that we're seeing change. And we always look back at that workforce shift, and it's somewhat mind-boggling to look at. But we're seeing millennials and Gen Z become over half the workforce over the next, couple of years here. In fact, Gen Z is actually overtaken boomers in the workforce. So if we think about the way we have traditionally messaged our association membership and our event attendance, it's been focused a lot more on the older generations who are now not the main sizable market that we're targeting. We need to shift how we talk to people and the channels that we use. So being able to kind of give that sort of, here's what you can do quick, here's what we need to do to reset, to really take that broader view. And then we can talk about the tactics that get us there. But that's a good way to kind of kick off the conversation and get everyone comfortable with the direction that we're trying to go in.
That's so good. I am loving it. I don't know, listeners, I don't know, or viewers, I don't know if you're as much of a nerd about this topic as I am, but I love ideating and talking about growth and sustaining success for organizations. Marketing is a discipline, but it's so much more than that. It's about how organizations succeed and the path to getting them there, which I think, as professionals, no matter what your industry is, that should excite you. So really loving this conversation, Shauna. And we could talk strategy all day, but I do want to also get into how you lead. Because so much of what you do in your day job is about moving your team in the direction that they need to go so that you achieve success for your clients. So as you're leading these cross-functional teams and you all have big goals, you have lots of clients and lots of different objectives that you're pursuing, what's your secret to really keeping people aligned and energized through all the complex things that they have to do, the timelines, the competing priorities?
Yeah, well, I will say project management tools have been key. And I know you're familiar from our previous work together that our team uses Asana to keep organized, but it really helps us have a big view of what's going on for the entire, campaign. And then we can break that down into smaller projects and break that down even further into tasks. So there's an opportunity for us to meet as a team where everyone's looking at it from what they need to do, but we're talking about our pieces and how those make up the greater whole that's going to lead to a successful deliverable, successful project, how we're then tracking the metrics on the back end to then inform the next project or the next deliverable. So there's kind of all of these different pieces moving, but having something that breaks it down into the smaller tasks so we don't get overwhelmed by the ultimate big goal that we're working towards, I find is really helpful. The other thing is making sure everybody has a role to play on the team and everyone knows what that role is. So I'm looking to everyone as a key contributor to the success of the area that they're responsible for. So when we're meeting as a team to check in on how things are going, everyone's bringing to the table, here's what's working, here's where I'm challenged. What can I learn from something going on at somebody else's area of expertise, or ask for support? Where are we seeing these challenges in other places? How can we overcome this challenge? Are we doing something differently with a different campaign maybe that would translate to this one? So we're always kind of looking for what I need to do for my role and then how it plays into the bigger picture. And the other thing that I always look for too is those in the moment praise opportunities. We move so quickly that it can be a lot easier to focus when somebody screws up on something or when something doesn't meet expectation than when we're crushing it. So we have a, internal terminology that we use for people when they're really crushing it. And so I like to sort of give those as badges of honor to people when they're really doing a great job and call them out, publicly, within our team's channels and things like that to give them praise. And certainly when we get praise from clients for work well done, we share that, very broadly so that everyone does see where their contributions go. And the last thing that I think is kind of key from a leader perspective is to try and listen to what's not being said. That one has taken, I think, a lot of time for me to kind of really start to get the nuances of, but it sometimes seems like when you're working with different teams, they communicate differently. There's different communication styles. And so occasionally I'll notice that I need to sort of play role of moderator to help bridge a gap to say, I feel like I'm hearing something over here, or is there a bigger challenge that's really not coming through so that we're solving it together and collaborating rather than someone just saying, I didn't get what I needed, but it was because someone didn't understand what they were asking for.
Very good. So those are terrific strategies and tools for keeping your internal team aligned. But you also have another side of that where you are, as we talked about before, often coming into organizations that are struggling in some way. Not always, but sometimes when things aren't going as people have expected them to with their marketing, and they're like, "Oh gosh, we need help," and then in the stage right. So
Sure.
how do you cultivate trust with your clients? Especially when you're coming in and suggesting that they make really bold strategic changes or shifts in their marketing approach?
Yeah. The first thing whenever we're kicking off a new engagement is to take the time to have a discovery conversation where we learn from all of the people who are key players on the client side. And it sort of depends how we're being brought in. I mean, anytime you're working with clients, there can be sensitivities when somebody is being brought in to help support something that maybe isn't going the way everyone wants it to. It can feel a little threatening sometimes to people. And our goal is never to do that. We just want to enhance and augment and work alongside the team and sort of fill gaps where people maybe don't have expertise or need more arms and legs just to execute things, because we all know that often we're doing more with less and everyone has small teams and is trying to make a lot of things happen. So our goal is to fill those gaps and to build up and support the existing team. So really, again, listening to what their needs are and how we can then complement. And then we bring in data and some of those validating facts that say, here's what we're seeing across the industry. So we can recommend change that might feel a little bit scary or might feel like it's not something that makes sense, but we can look back at the data and say, here's the why behind it. And then one of the things I love about so many of the channels that we have available to us now is so much of it's digital, which means we can test and we can see results really quickly and determine whether we should keep going down a path or whether we should change. So when people have concerns about going down a new path or trying a new direction, we often recommend some type of test, an A/B test or something where we say, well, let's try this. let's see how it goes for a couple of weeks. And if it's not performing, we'll go back to the way you saw it before or to your recommendation, or we can test them side by side and the winner is the direction we'll go in. But it also gives, some of that opportunity for us to try things in a way that doesn't feel like you're putting it all on the line in one fell swoop and it's either going to make or break the direction. It kind of gives us that opportunity to build trust a little bit more, because that's going to be so key to getting people to then want to take bigger leaps and work more closely with our team.
Yeah, love that. What is one thing that you think that leaders often overlook when they're trying to increase engagement? And that might be member engagement, audience engagement, like wherever it is, engagement within those audiences they're trying to target.
There's no one size fits all approach. It's about personalization. It's the what's in it for me. And sometimes that's hard because you may have 5 or 6 audiences that you're targeting, or you get people at varying stages of their career. And so what they're looking for, whether that's from membership or whether it's from programs or products or events, what their needs are and how we talk to them about the value of participation would be different based on the stage they are in their career. But if we just go out to everybody and say, if you're in this, particular space, you should be at this event or you should be a member, there's nothing in it directly for me as a person. And at the end of the day, that's what we care about most. So we just need to think about people kind of from their consumer side. And I think sometimes we forget that the personalization matters even in a B2B environment.
Yes, agree. And I'm going to pivot a little bit. We'll get back to some more marketing stuff in a minute, but I want to talk a little bit about finding your voice and how you've built your career. You've built your career on strategic vision and execution. And I'm curious about how you found your leadership voice along the way.
I think a lot of times there's trial and error and you just got to go with what feels right. I think the thing that really helps as you kind of think those things through is identifying a mentor or mentors. And I've been very fortunate throughout my career to have, a lot of strong female role models who I've worked with, who've been my bosses, who've been leaders within the organizations that I work for. And I've been able to look to them in mentorship roles from pretty early on in my career. And it's given me that place to bounce ideas, to ask for guidance, to say, how am I taking this approach, or am I coming on too strong, or is it appropriate for me to ask for a seat at this table, to kind of give me some of that guidance to help me, move forward and figure out where to go. But I feel like so much of it comes down to what feels authentic and true to yourself, and really identifying what your values are and staying true to those, because that I think has really grounded me and helped me realize that building that kind of trust and having authenticity in the communications and relationships that I build, that's really important to me. And by keeping that at the foundation of the way that I, use my voice and try to figure out where I need to go next, that's what's allowing me to be successful when I focus on those things that I know are truly me.
And have you been in situations where you have encountered any bias or challenges as a woman leader, especially in these B2B spaces, And if so, what have you encountered and how did you navigate those things?
Yeah, I've been, I think, more fortunate than most to not see it as much as many others. Certainly, I know there's a lot of women who've paved the way before me to, help make it, a little bit easier to navigate. I think one of the things that's sort of maybe one of the last areas that I've seen that I think is still a challenge is the parenting side of being a woman. So being both a woman and a parent in the workforce feels like you might have more appointments. You might get called out because your kid's sick, or you've got to take them to this doctor's appointment or that. And balancing that in a fast-paced environment when everyone expects you to be on all the time can be really hard. When daycare calls, right when you're walking into a client presentation and your heart jumps into your throat and you're thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if I have to walk out of here right now? That it's a hard balance sometimes to find. But I also tend to find that working moms, they multitask like nobody else. They get the job done. They will figure it out. They always have plan B, plan C, plan D in their back pockets, and they're going to make sure that it happens and no one's going to be left high and dry, and there will always be snacks. So you can count on those things. And that doesn't always I feel like that continues, even as your kids get older. I mean, my kids are a little older now, and just last night I was making dinner, working on a diorama and helping, NJHS application all at the same time while still responding to the last few emails that were coming through. And I just think that's, one of the challenges of being a woman who's a working mom in the workforce. But I think owning it, I think in the beginning of my career, I tried to hide it. I tried to keep it separate so that my kids didn't interfere with my job. But I think being able to own what I do, but what I do really well, and that it's not despite, but it's because of, has actually been very empowering.
That's great advice. And staying in that same vein, what advice would you give emerging women leaders who are saying, oh, well, I'm really detail driven, but I also kind of can get the big picture stuff done too, like you are. And they're just starting out and maybe they're in jobs that may not support both of those strengths right now. What advice do you have for them?
Always looking for opportunities where you can raise your hand to get involved in something, even if it's outside of your day job. I mean, maybe there's an opportunity to do something that's more social for your organization, or something that is sort of a pet project that no one really owns, but it would play to a strength that maybe you don't get in your day-to-day work role. Look for those opportunities to stretch those muscles. And sometimes it could be volunteering or getting involved in an industry organization. I mean, I've been active in IAEE for a number of years. I've been on committees. So, if you're not finding some of those opportunities within your day job, looking for places like that where you can get involved in the industry, it also gives you a chance to network and hear about other ways that people are doing the same kinds of things, or other roles within the industry that might actually lean into those, different strengths that you have. But look for places to test it out. Raise your hand and don't be afraid to get involved, because I think that's how you figure out, oh, I can do these two things, or oh, this one's where I think I'm going to blossom more, or I find a lot more excitement in this particular area. I think being able to kind of see more well-rounded opportunities will help you figure out where your strengths lie and where your passions lie.
Yeah, that's great advice as well. Shauna, relationships are the core of your business. Relationships, relationship marketing is one of your strengths. And I'm very curious what you're seeing around how organizations are using that. Based on what you're seeing, how are the best organizations using relationship marketing right now to stand out in these crowded spaces? Everybody's competing for attention right now.
Right. Yes, it's all about the attention economy. It goes back to personalized experiences. I often say to people, I think, organizations like Netflix and Amazon sort of ruined us all, right? Because they know who we are and they make suggestions and they know what we want before we want it. But it's made us all realize, hey, if we can live like that, why would I want to engage with an organization that doesn't seem to know who I am or care about who I am? So I think, again, where when we look at the shifting demographics, we used to have people who knew our associations and knew our events, and they would say, oh, are you going to that meeting? Of course I'm going to that meeting. Or, oh yeah, of course I'm going to be a member because this is the organization that serves my industry. But as those people move out of the workforce and we have new generations coming in, they're looking to social media to give them information and guidance. And how many people tell you, I didn't know how to do that, so I looked it up on YouTube and I found a video that told me how to do something. So they're not automatically looking to an association or an event to give them that training. They're looking to peers. They're looking to other sources that they see as trusted. So if we're going to get in front of them, we have to tell them, we know who you are, we understand your needs, and we're here to serve you. And this is exactly how. So, we need to demonstrate to a member that we understand what products and programs they're engaging with, and we're going to suggest other things to them that are going to be relevant. We need to tell our registrants that we know who they are and not make them fill out the same demographic questions every single year, but rather one click. Oh, here's all my demos. Great. Maybe I update something here or there, but I'm focused on the registration itself and not filling out the same information that, frankly, you should know about me by now. Tell me you know me and my interests. When you ask me to fill out so many demographic questions about my areas of interest or focus, do something with them. Connect those to sessions I might be interested in when I get on site at the event, or other programs that you offer in that same vein, because that tells me you know who I am and you care about me and you have things to offer me. So I think that's, really the people who are really leaning into that and doing that well are the ones who are succeeding right now.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And I will also ask, because, in my day job, I work in the not-for-profit space. I am really curious about if you could just wave a wand. If if you had the ability to just wave a wand and fix one thing, Shauna, that nonprofit organizations are doing in terms of their approach to marketing strategy, what would that one thing be?
It's a tough question, but I think the one thing I would do related to marketing is remind everyone or somehow magically have them all know that there is more than one P to marketing. Marketing is more than promotion, right? If anyone goes to school for marketing or for business, you know that there's the product, the price, the place, the promotion. Oftentimes marketing is only thought of as promotion. And so you have these organizations having really great ideas and brainstorming sessions about products or offerings, but marketing doesn't get brought to the table until they're ready to promote. And marketing has so much more to offer around how we're positioning the product or the offering, what the pricing is, and how that relates to other things in the industry, and how we're going to have to position it based on the pricing. So getting marketing a seat at the table when we're doing the strategy for the project, the program, the event, making sure marketing is part of that conversation. They need to know the goals, the objectives. They need to be part of the development piece. That would probably be the one thing that I would change, because I think it would make marketing campaigns across the nonprofit space so much more engaging from the beginning, and would probably make a lot more successful decisions that don't have to kind of go through as much iteration to get there.
Good. So good. Nothing to add there. That's a perfect answer. And I am going to ask another question. I'm going to stay with this. What is something that you think people should know, or that you would like for them to know about marketing that they don't know?
One thing that I often tell our teams is marketing can sometimes feel like the grunt work. When everything goes well, when the conference is successful, we reach all of our goals, it's because the content was great. Everyone says to the content team, you did a great job, you built such a great program, right? All those things. When the numbers aren't coming in or things aren't going the way we want, it must be the bad marketing fault. And so it's really hard sometimes to be in that place where you feel like you don't always get the praise for the work when it's going well. And again, it's not all on marketing. It takes all of us coming together to build that program and to market it and to promote it the right way. But it's certainly not going to always be marketing's fault when it's not going well either. Suddenly everyone's a marketer and they want to, sort of jump in and tell you what you should do, or you should have tried this, or did you try that? So, I mean, I think one of the things to know is it's not for the faint of heart. It is a hard role and position to be in, but when everything comes together and you can be part of that partnership and that dynamic team that's driving success for an organization, there's really nothing like it.
Love it. Love it. Well, I have two final questions. One of them is going to be very fun. The first I would ask is, what's a leadership principle that guides your work, regardless of the project or the client?
Especially in the role I'm in now, I keep myself grounded and focusing on my team's success. So if my team is successful, if they're, coming up with new ideas, if we're driving, offerings that serve our clients' needs, if we're able to do that efficiently and profitably and serving the client in a way that's helping them be successful, then I'm successful. That my success is really reflected in my team's ability to do all of those things and do them well and continue to grow and kind of continue to identify what the next opportunity is, then that's going to keep me successful. So really keeping my focus on my team and how I can better support them.
And finally, this is a fun one.
They've all been fun.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. If you had to describe your leadership style as an animal, what animal would it be?
It might be my dog who was just barking in the background, I think, because she's got so much energy, and I try to lead in a way that, drives all the energy. I try to be the cheerleader, not barking at the mailman, but cheering them on when they're delivering all those good Amazon purchases to my house. But that constant cheerleader, that one who's, there to wag their tail and sharing the success of everybody as they're successful, as they're trying their hardest, as they're moving things forward, as they're trying new things. It's kind of that loyal person who's always there and there to be sort of that cheerleader and make noise when you need to make noise.
That's it. Wonderful, wonderful, Shauna. Thank you so much. And is there anything else that you'd like to share, just as a parting thought with our audience, whether it's how to get connected with you, how to follow your leadership journey, or anything big that you're working on right now that you'd love folks to know about?
Well, I would love to be in touch with anyone who wants to reach out. I'm available on LinkedIn. I think it's under Shana B. Peters. I'm on Instagram. I'm on several things like that. I think I'm pretty easy to find. I'm also available on the MDG website, mdg.agency. You can find me there as well. I am always happy to chat about what we're seeing and what we're doing. It's a passion, obviously, and something that I'd love to continue chatting about. If there's anything I can do to help anyone, reach out. I'd love to chat.
I love that. Thank you so much, Shauna. She is an amazing leader, amazing marketer, and I'm so honored that you were able to take some time out of your schedule to chat with us today. So, folks, get in touch with Shana Peters. And listeners, viewers, thank you so much for joining us. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Leadership Bites. Until then, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.